An attack on peacekeepers is terribly devastating to the force, first of all. Men and women who are in that particular force find it terribly devastating because they, as peacekeepers, are not an enemy to anybody.
Witness 445, a retired lieutenant general from the Kenyan Armed Forces, was the third prosecution witness at the confirmation of charges hearing in the case of Abu Garda. He served in 4 missions for the United Nations in Namibia, Mozambique, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. In 2006, he was the head of the United Nations Assessment Mission, composed of 35 senior military officers from various countries sent to the African Union Peacekeeping Mission in Darfur. The witness stated that the AMIS mission was to monitor fighting groups in Darfur and that they did not have adequate equipment and sufficient troops to protect the civilians.
So during your mission, did you receive any information about the impartiality or otherwise of the AMIS?
Yes, some of our officers that we deployed in the field to go to AMIS areas did not only talk to AMIS, they also talked to local people, government, forces, rebel forces in those areas. And when they came back, we got the report that in some areas, AMIS was being seen as if it was a weak organization. It was an organization which was only there to protect the interests of the government, for example. And as such, the civilians were saying that AMIS cannot protect them because AMIS is in bed with, the government forces. Those were allegations.
Were you provided with any substantial information to support these allegations?
I don't think that, I can say we got the substantial evidence to prove that. But what we got was that one side was very happy with AMIS. For example, the government forces that we dealt with and officials were saying AMIS was doing an excellent job, while the civilians were saying AMIS was not doing a good job.
The legal representatives of victims also had an opportunity to question the witness. Ms. Helen Cissé, representing victims from Senegal, asked why the general thinks that the local people in Haskanita were hostile to the African Union peacekeepers.
Your Honor, I don't think I said that villagers were hostile. The information we got, the impression was that the villagers, the ordinary, especially those who had been, who had moved on because their dwellings had been burnt down, were disappointed that AMIS, which they thought was deployed in Darfur to protect civilians, was not doing so. Because civilians thought that the deployment of AMIS was to protect them from the various rebel groups who continued to molest them or who had actually burnt down their dwellings, and as such, they were now IDPs. That's the impression.
Mr. Brahima Kone, representing victims from Mali, questioned the witness next.
Mon général,
General,
à travers votre parcours professionnel,
throughout the course of your professional career and your experience in the field of peacekeeping, have you ever seen or heard of civilian populations attacking a peacekeeping mission?
In my entire service with the United Nations peacekeeping missions, I've never heard of ordinary civilians taking up arms to go and attack peacekeepers, especially unarmed, civilians. I've never heard about that. It's unusual because they expect the peacekeepers to protect them, and hence they would have no reason to attack the peacekeepers.
Colonel Frank Adaka and Mr. Akim Akimbote, representing victims from Nigeria, asked the witness about the impact of the attack on the peacekeepers' families.
The families of the peacekeepers, for example, the ones who were taken hostages in Sierra Leone, was enormous, because the families were agonizing. Where are their loved ones? What has happened to them? Because it would go for quite some time before we knew where they were. I want to give you an example. A Kenyan one-star general was taken hostage, and for 2 weeks, we did not know where he was, whether he was alive or dead. And I lived very close during that time. I was the Vice Chief of General Staff. I lived very close to the family in Nairobi. And I would go and try and talk to the family to encourage them that we are doing all we could to find out where General Mulinge was. And as much as you would want to encourage them to move on, you could see the helplessness, especially the wife, the children. They would be very much affected. And that happened with the soldiers also.
Mr. Karim Khan, defense counsel for Abu Garda, cross-examined the witness.
If you encountered a situation where a large group of civilians who were disaffected in the manner we've described, if they came to your camp and said in unequivocal terms, "We are so fed up with what's going on and our lot that we think we would be better off without you, and if we are attacked again we will attack you," what would you have done?
I would be terribly worried myself, and I would do everything possible to do what I'm expected to do. If I had the means to protect the civilians, I'll show it that I will protect it by not just showing, but giving that protection. But at the same time, such a demand will have to go up to my headquarters, that we have been given an ultimatum by the local population as well as the rebels. And the people up there will probably give me guidance.
If it came to your knowledge that one representative, let's call him the representative of the government of Sudan, was using his presence in the base to give the coordinates of rebels outside the base and of civilians so that they could be bombed, would you think that could have the potential to endanger your essential ingredient of impartiality?
That is correct. Obvious.
The confirmation of charges hearing continued this week with a defense witness who testified in closed session. It is expected that the hearings will end on Friday, 30th October, with the closing arguments of all parties and the participants.